Hello everybody, welcome to the very first episode of Sketch 'em All, where we're going to be learning how to draw Pokemon. So for episode 1, I figured we would start from the very beginning. Now, future episodes may not necessarily be in any sort of order. I kind of want to mix it up a little bit, so we're just not doing all first gen, or, all just the popular ones or whatever. I want it to be kind of random, but I figured it would be good to start with one that everybody's familiar with and just is at the start. So I wanted to start with Bulbasaur today. What we're gonna do is first look at the reference image. I want to emphasize that looking at a reference image is not bad. It doesn't make you any less of an artist. All professional artists use references. It's really important to do, and it helps you stay more accurate. But you want to be smart about how you use your references. So we're not just we're going to hide the reference after we look at it, because we don't just want to draw the exact same thing as the official art. We want to really understand what's actually going into the drawing. So one thing, or some things that we're going to notice are the shapes that are being used mostly. So I notice very stumpy, everything about Bulbasaur is stumpy. So stumpy ears, stumpy legs, kind of a low to the ground body. I notice the really geometric shapes of the dark splotches on him. I'm noticing the eye shapes are very kind of triangular, but sort of rounded off at the top. The mouth is really wide. The teeth are pointing down, which is important to remember. There's even almost a little bit of a down point, like a beak. This is more noticeable in other art of Bulbasaur than this one. This is just sort of the standard Ken Sugimori official art. But I think if you look at older art of Bulbasaur especially, you see more of like a beak there almost. And then you've got the bulb, very wide towards the bottom. It's supposed to be, like, according to its Pokedex entries, it's supposed to be heavy enough that Bulbasaur has a hard time standing up on its hind legs, so we want to make sure that it's nice and big and it's wide enough so that it looks like it takes up the whole back. It ends at 3 little points here, so you don't want to really do more than that. And then we've got claws. So little tiny claws, kind of triangular, diamond shaped, with a little tiny bit of space in between them. So that's what I'm noticing so far about the reference. What I wanted to start out by doing is practice a little bit of certain things that we pointed out here. So with the eyes, all Pokemon have different eyes more or less, but there are going to be kind of patterns that you'll notice. So for Bulbasaur's eyes, as a first stage evolution, of course it's going to be more cute, more wide-eyed, kind of rounder in its shape design, and so you want to kind of keep that in mind. So I'm just starting out by practicing drawing the eye. We're going to have to keep in mind angles, of course. So this Bulbasaur is angled, so that this eye is wide, it's looking more straight on. This one's more at an angle, so it's narrower. And that's just a principle you would need to know for drawing in general. There's also a little bit of a lid, so that's something you want to keep in mind. And once we get to the evolutions, that'll be more prominent because Venusaur's got sort of like droopy eyes, almost like that. So, but with Bulbasaur, more alert, more wide. I guess the other thing I wanted to look at was the legs. So, very particular shape. You want, if you want to break this down, like, this is easy for me to just eyeball, but if you want to sort of break it down, it's almost like a circle or an oval, and then it ends in a little boxy shape. So you want more, it's more like chunky towards the middle, but it's tapered at both where it's coming out from the body and at the foot. So, and then you want little claws at the end. So some things you would not want to do You don't want to mistake the shape of the eyes, because with Pokemon that's very particular. There's all sorts of different eye shapes, and it's easy to mix them up. So you wouldn't want to do something like this, make it too, mean looking. This is more of like a Charizard eye, I guess. But you also wouldn't want to make it too tall like this. So you're going to get all sorts of different eyes. And that's a really important part to the identity of the Pokemon you're drawing, so you don't want to mix them up too much. You want to be as accurate as possible where the eye is concerned. Another thing with the legs is this is sort of a mistake I made when I was doing a practice drawing, is almost making it a little too realistic. So doing something like this, if you're doing more of a realistic style, then that's fine. If you want to kind of experiment with that or do your own design, that's one thing. But if you're just trying to do kind of a standard accurate drawing, then this sort of thing isn't really going to fit Bulbasaur. It's got to be a lot more stumpy. A leg like this, if you, as you'll notice, looks a little closer to like Charmander. So once you draw a Charmander or Charmeleon, that's the sort of leg you'll be going for. But for right now, for Bulbasaur, this isn't what we're going for. We want to know exactly what we're doing. Okay, so without further ado, let's hide this reference, and we're going to go to our main drawing. So the first thing that you want to do is get an undersketch down. This is going to be very light, very simple. You want kind of a big face. And with really most animals, you want to think of it almost like how like an insect is split into different parts. You've got the like head, the thorax, and the abdomen. You can do that like as a drawing mechanism too. So with a lot of animals, so the head, the chest, and then the abdomen, you can think of. So with Bulbasaur, again, we want him very low to the ground. So we're gonna add the legs as part of the undersketch, and almost as part of these circles. So coming right out from the circle. And I like having the legs almost sort of like cross-legged or bow-legged, I guess. Which I think it emphasizes sort of a cuteness about his shape. Or his posture. So it emphasizes as sort of a baby Pokemon. Not literally a baby Pokemon, of course. With this back leg is going to be a little thicker. That's usually the case with any sort of animals. So the way that it's starting to look here, I think I want Bulbasaur facing a little bit closer in. So maybe looking over to the side, like this. I think that's how I want it. One thing also that I noticed with the shape of the head is you want like it's almost a steep sort of lip here. So it's not going to look like that, the kind of wide cheek or snout. That's not really what you're going for. So kind of a very steep drop off there. Straight into the ears, do a little bit of detail on those. Get the eyes in. Make sure that the eyes have a lot of space in between them. So I started doing some guidelines here. I actually think this eye is a little bit too tall, or it's too high up on the face. So we've got where the lip is right here. So draw a line from that and make sure my guidelines are a little better. That's where the mouth is. That's where the mouth's going to be. So we can even do, start to sketch that out. And then you want a little bit of room in between that. So maybe from right there. And then the end of the eye should line up with the end of the mouth. I'm doing maybe a little bit more detail than I should on this level of an undersketch. Finally, we want the bulb, again, nice and wide. This sort of concave shape as it's coming up, and then 3, what do you call them? The leaves, I guess, which of course are gonna go all the way down. Alright, so I think this is good for a basic undersketch. We can add details with a harder pencil in the next layer. So of course I'm drawing digitally, I'm using Paint Tool Psi. You can do basically the same thing with a traditional sketch, or with whatever your drawing program of choice is. I am switching up pencil hardnesses, switching up layers, but you can do that in real life just by altering how hard you're drawing on the paper. You never want your undersketch to be drawn with a lot of pressure, because then it's just gonna. This is a very common mistake for younger artists. Pressing really hard on your initial sketch, and then it gets really hard to erase. So you don't want to do that. So for the mouth, of course, actually, this is a little mistake I made with the undersketch. It's this middle part isn't going quite where it should. So if you'll forgive me, my undersketch, my guidelines are not going to quite line up. One thing I want to make sure of is that there's a little, you've got depth here. So you want a little bit of the lip to show. And then I'm going to put the tooth on the end there too. So it's not just totally flush with the face. It pops out a little bit. There's more depth to it. And the little tooth on the end there. So let me make his lip curl up a little bit more. Okay, so let's get some detail in on the eyes. Fill in the eyes. I think that's a little bit wider than I want, so we're gonna fix that just a bit. Draw the other one. Yeah, maybe my first instinct was right on the mouth here. So that's a nice thing about drawing digitally, is just being able to fix things in a flash like that. But you can always fix it with traditional art. Just never draw too hard on the paper. Okay. Draw the lids in there, and then that leaves us enough room in the middle for these splotches. So we're going to do kind of the geometric shapes. Okay, I'm going to have Bulbasaur looking over to the side. The shines are in the middle, more in the middle of the eye. They're not going to be over on the side like that. That's true of any eye shines. There's a lot of beginning artists I see kind of have a tendency to draw them like this, like where they're just in the corner like that. But really, when you look at the actual designs of Pokemon and like anime characters in general, the eye shine is going to be like in the middle here. It's going to have more of an edge around it. So, and then you'll have like usually like some iris color for this style of eye as well. So yeah, you don't want it really flush with the edge like that, or tangent with the edge. Now, if you're drawing like more Western style eyes, cartoon eyes, then that will be true of the iris and the pupil more. But that's getting a little bit off topic. So going in and drawing the feet. Again, we still can maintain the shape of the legs, but maybe pop the foot out just a little bit. And then, of course, add your little claws. We're gonna have this foot turned out just a bit more, so you won't really see as much of that other claw. Don't really like the shape of this one, so I'm gonna fix it. Alright, there we go. Okay, back. For Bulbasaur, you don't want... I think the bulb will extend a little bit past where his body is, but you don't want it to go too far. So... For this back leg, I'm having the thigh poke in like this just a little. Not too much. Again, that if you do it too much, it'll end up looking really like a different type of Pokemon. More Charmander. Alright. So that's that. And then just a little indication of the leg all the way in the back. To add more depth, kind of also these indications of like maybe a little haunch, a little shoulder there. And this helps add more depth with the bulb too, because it's like almost like sagging down over here, but then the shoulder comes up over it over here. So it makes it seem like it's got depth to it rather than just sort of being attached or like it doesn't have any weight, like it's styrofoam or something. Okay, last thing that we will do is finish adding these geometric shapes. So I don't know how totally accurate these are going to be, but I figure probably with Bulbasaurs, they're like freckles. They're going to be a little bit different for each Bulbasaur. Almost like Spinda. You don't want to add them necessarily in the same position every time. Alright, I think that's good. And just a few finishing fixes. I'm going to make this ear just a little bit shorter so that it matches the other one. It's not too different. Bulbasaur's ears will, as I recall, get a little bit taller on evolution, but you don't want to make them too tall right now. Okay, and then finally, almost forgot our nostrils here. Okay, so that is our line art for Bulbasaur, but we can of course add some color. So just to look at the reference again, oops, we got some of our leg and eye drawings here, but we just want to look at color for now. So it's this kind of mint green, and then a more yellow green for the bulb, of course. Red eyes, and that's about it. That the darker splotches will just be a darker shade of the body green. Okay, so color is you want to keep in mind going to be slightly different depending on lighting. All color is just light reflecting off of an object. So depending on the light, the color will be different. It really is dependent on that. So there isn't really ever going to be a totally set in stone color. When you look up any given character, not just Pokemon, but anything, the colors will vary slightly. So it doesn't have to be exact. You can pretty much eyeball it, and it's a little more realistic if you do eyeball it that way. So I'm using, for paint tool, I'm using a crayon tool. I like kind of that soft, fuzzy texture that it gives. Just as a little digital drawing tip, I'm not really worrying too much about getting outside the lines. I sort of like that fuzzy texture. If it goes outside the lines just a little bit, that's okay for me. But if you want to avoid that, I usually color and then erase where the colors overlap. So erasing comes second. And I don't worry too much about getting the color everywhere. Okay, so we're going to do a more yellow-green for the bulb. You just want to make sure with your colors, your color choices, that they have a good degree of contrast. You don't want them too bright. You don't want them too saturated. Although mine are admittedly a little more saturated than the original Sugimori art that we were looking at. So it's up to you. That's the nice thing, is coloring can kind of be different. as far as shading goes, I'm just going to shade on the same layer. And I'm going to shade with not just gray, but the kind of darker versions of the colors. You want to make sure you've got a light source, so we'll put our light source over... really, if we're looking at the eye shinies, then it should be kind of coming from up here. So it'll be pretty basic, pretty simple. Okay, now we're going to do the shading on the bulb. One thing I wanted to talk about a little bit was texture. So this isn't something we get a tremendous sense of in the official art, but it is something that I will do a little bit of in my coloring. Just that's going to sort of be my personal style. Everybody's going to take a little bit of their own style. It's not going to look exactly like the official art, and it shouldn't necessarily. Everybody's going to kind of bring their own style to it. That's what's cool about the Pokemon trading card game, is that you get to see other artists reinterpret the Pokemon in their styles. So for the bulb, it's a plant, of course, it's leaves, so it's going to have a little bit of a different texture to it than Bulbasaur's body, which I mean, you have to use your imagination a little bit here, but I always sort of imagined as sort of like a toad or a leopard gecko or something like that, like sort of that rough but soft at the same time, if that makes sense. If you've ever touched a leopard gecko, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But for the leaf up here, the bulb, then this is it's a leaf. It's gonna have that waxy cuticle. So you want really bold highlights for it. So from our light source up here, and you can even have them going a little bit different directions. So I've got the bold highlights, and then I'm going to do a little kind of circular highlight just to sort of emphasize the roundness of the bulb there. So you can do a little bit of both, maybe just a tiny spot like that. Okay. So that's about it. If you want, you can clean up a little of the undersketching. I like leaving just a little bit of sketchiness there. I like it looking, I guess, a little bit rougher, but we'll clean up. But yeah, that's what it looks like from farther away. Zoom back into where we were. And I think that turned out pretty good. You can, of course, make your own finishing touches if you want, or make it a little bit different. That's just a basic pose. If you want to do something a little bit different with it, practice the basic pose more. Make sure you get the principle behind the shape of the eyes, and the shape of everything, the shape of the body, so that you can manipulate that shape to different situations or angles without really compromising what the basic shape is. So of course there's plenty of references that you can use, which is great. Don't be afraid to do that. But also don't be afraid to move outside of the official art a little bit and practice and experiment. So just noticed a little correction I can make. But while I'm doing that, I will say thank you for joining me for this first episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it fun and informative and followed along, hopefully. If you want to show me what you came up with, then feel free to do that. I hope you keep practicing and come up with something that's even different from what I did. So I want everybody to keep growing and learning as artists. So thank you for tuning in, and I will see you next time.